Okay, so this is the last thing that we're going to do for the review. So these are commonly used functions. So these are all the functions that we will reuse that comes from business algebra. Now, if you didn't use business algebra, it's okay. Most of the stuff, probably 90% of the stuff that we use in business calculus, you wouldn't have learned it in business algebra, so you're okay as long as your algebra skills are up to par, you'll be all right. So I wanted to make sure that we review all the functions that you're going to hear about and remind you of how we will use them or how we attained them. So the first one is called a cost function. Okay, and we're going to call this C of x. It's a terrible C. C of x, okay? So we call it C of x because it identifies it as the cost function. Now, what is a cost? In business, every time you open your doors, you will have put out money to be able to sell your product, produce your product, manufacture your product, whatever it is, the type of business that you're going to have. So you have to put out money to be able to do business. That's just the nature of the beast. So your cost function is money that comes out of your pocket as a business owner. Okay, it's what you have to spend every month, every year, whatever it is, to purchase things so that you can produce your product. So the cost function has a couple different things. It has a fixed cost. Okay, so a fixed cost are things that you have to spend before you manufacture one thing. So for instance, if I was manufacturing DVDs, oh my gosh, you probably don't even know what that is. If I was manufacturing MP3 players, okay? MP3 players, they require certain machinery before that I have to have. They require a certain number of employees to run that machine. It requires a building that I have to pay for in order to be able to get my business up and running. So fixed costs are costs that are fixed. That means they don't change. It's going to cost you this no matter what. Okay? Then we're going to add to that a variable cost. Okay? So the variable cost, variable meaning it moves, right? It's variable. It's not stationary. A variable cost is determinant on how many products I'm producing. So if I have an MP3 player, what does it cost me? The materials, the labor, anything that it costs me to produce an actual MP3 player, okay? So that's why it's variable, because it depends on how many products I'm producing, okay? So my variable cost moves depending on how many products. So let's say it costs me $1,500 a month just to open my doors, my utilities, the rent on the building, the rent on the machinery, anything that's set in stone. I have to have those products, or I have to have the pieces of machinery in order to be able to produce. Then it costs me, say, and these are dollar amounts, say it costs me $50 per MP3 player. That's my cost function, okay? The fixed costs plus the variable costs. That's how much money I have to put out before I sell anything, right? I haven't sold a thing, it's just what I've done to get my business up and running. The next one is called the revenue function. And this one we're going to call it capital R of X. Okay, so what is revenue? Revenue is everything that you bring in. I go out, I sell 100 MP3 players. That is the revenue, right? It's not how much I make. Okay, that's something completely different. Revenue is everything that comes in. So a revenue function is the price of the product. So in other words, not what I spent on it, but how much I'm selling it for, okay? So the price of the product times the number of products. Okay? So one thing that you'll probably see in your MyMathLab is it'll be P times X. The price of the product times the number of products. All right, so let's keep going with this scenario. So let's say that I am going to sell my MP3 players for $125 each. Okay? It costs me $50 to produce it, plus the $1,500, don't forget that. I'm going to sell it for $125. So I've ramped up the price a little bit to cover all my costs and to be able to make some money. Okay, so that's my revenue. Now, I'm running out of room. Let's see, I'm going to do it this way so I can do all of this on one board. Okay, and then my revenue is 125x. Okay, so now I can erase this. All right, so now, what's the relationship between these two? Well, when these two are equal to each other, when the revenue and the cost are equal, so when revenue equals the cost, that's what's called a break-even point. Okay, that means I haven't lost any money, but I haven't made any money. Okay, it's break even. It means I'm good to go. I'm not losing money. I'm kind of holding my own, but I'm not making anything. I don't have anything to go, pay my rent or go buy some food, but I'm breaking even. When my revenue is below my cost, this is a loss. That means I'm losing money. My revenue is not covering the cost of my production. Okay? When my revenue is greater than the cost, that's when I get profit. Okay, so if you took 1324, the business algebra, you probably remember this diagram. Okay, here is my cost function. Here is my revenue function. I'm going to do this in black so you can see the difference. Okay, so there's my cost and my revenue function. Break-even points are right here. That's where my cost and my revenue equal each other. Okay, that's break-even. Up here is my profit. That's when revenue is above cost. Down here is loss. That's when my revenue is less than cost. Okay, so that pictorially, that's what all of that is. Okay, so how do I find profit? Well, profit is when revenue is above cost. Okay, revenue is above cost. So what I'm going to do, profit is when I can subtract off the cost and I get something left over. So it's revenue minus my cost. That's how you find profit, revenue minus my cost. So let's do this. So we have our revenue is 125x minus my cost. Okay. Remember, this is where that review of polynomials, when you have a minus sign in the front, it says to subtract off, right? So I'm going to push this negative through. So I end up with 125x minus 1,500 minus 50x. So 125 minus 50 is 75x minus 1,500. That is my profit function. Okay, so profit is capital P of x. Okay? So that just kind of gives you a breakdown of the different functions that we're going to be using. Break even, some of the terminology, break even is when your revenue and your cost are equal. Profit is when you subtract the revenue minus the cost. Make sure you put the cost in parentheses so that you can subtract it correctly. And then we'll go from there. Okay.